What's up, guys? Today I want to look at what I consider the main point of marriage. But before I give you my input and my thoughts, I want to ask you, what do you think it is? Is it to have the ultimate weapon against sexual immorality, like it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7? Or do you think it's to have children and raise them pleasing to God and them have children and it multiplies? Or is there something else? If you want to take a look at my thoughts on this, let's turn to Ephesians chapter 5, verses 25 through 33. Just a heads up, you're probably going to hear me ramble for a little while on this because I really love this passage and these verses and the thoughts that are here. A great book to read on this is called This Momentary Marriage by John Piper. Really recommend that one. I think I've read it 3 times now. It's great. But anyways, chapter 5, verses 25 through 33. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. Because we are members of this body, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So my main point, my main thought on marriage comes from verse 32. Paul says marriage refers to Christ and the church. So let's sit on that. Let's think on that for a minute. If marriage is referring to Christ and the church, what if God's main focus of marriage is to show what Christ's love is like? It would explain why God sees marriage to be so important, why Jesus speaks of divorce and the only reason for divorce is adultery. But let's look a little bit deeper. There are 2 relationships in life that you experience where you find unconditional love, really regardless of religion. That's a parent to a child, and normally, not always, I understand this is not always true, a husband to a wife. So in more than one instance, the church is called the wife of Christ, the bride of Christ. So what if the marriage we have on earth between a husband and a wife is meant to portray this unconditional love that can only be found with God? If the husband is always willing to forgive the wife and vice versa, the relationship will last regardless and it will be very strong. Christ is always willing to forgive us, to forgive his church. But there's a lot more that goes into this. So let's talk a little bit about the Jewish tradition. I don't have all these verses with me. I did not take all the time to look it up. But if you look in Jewish tradition and culture at this time, a man would leave his family and he would then go to his soon-to-be wife, propose, and he would leave. And he would say that he is going to build a house for her. Normally this was not a new house. This was an addition onto his father's house. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Just like Jesus said, he is leaving and he left to go build us a room in his father's house in heaven. So just as we are the bride that Jewish man would come back later after his addition, after his house was finished. He would come back for his wife, and there would be a joyous celebration. He would get his wife and take her back to the room he had built in his father's house. So, when I see myself looking at marriage, while yes, it is to have children, and it is a great defense for sexual immorality, is that the main point that we can get out of it? A marriage is meant to portray what Christ has done for his church. And there's a difference between having two souls that are knitted together, like friendship is mentioned. If you look in 1 Samuel chapter 18, I think, you see that Jonathan and David, their souls were knitted as best friends. That's pretty cool. But when souls of marriage, they're not knitted. Those two souls are not knitted. They become one. They are one flesh. So what if God's point in marriage was not only for us to be happy, but to have the one example here on earth to love like Jesus in the flesh? Marriage is meant to be a glimpse of the love that Christ has for us. And there are beautiful things that come with it. Don't get me wrong. I want to have kids. I want to be married. I want to have kids. Will that happen? I don't know. Paul tells us to live as we're called, and I agree with that. If I'm called to be married, then I know that I'm supposed to portray the love that Christ has for his church. And that shows so much to a non-believer. If you look at a marriage between a strong Christian household and a non-religious household, the only thing that holds them together is their version of love for the non-believer. And love for them is just an emotion. There's no connection. There's no bond. And most psychologists, whenever they study emotion, they say it lasts for about 6 months. So after that, what do they have to hold them together? And what do they have to make them respect each other? Marriage falls apart if it's not founded on the love of God. So then you have this marriage of believers, a husband and wife. They get married, they love each other. And yes, absolutely there's that emotion. You can't deny that. But when that emotion falls away, you have an everlasting love because you know that you're supposed to love like Christ. For unfailing love, you have to have God as the focus point. And this is a short few verses. I didn't go super in depth on this, but I think it's huge to look at marriage as a viewpoint on Christ's love. It's not just this bond that's meant to last forever. I mean, divorce rates are insanely high, inside and outside of the church. And I think it's because we've moved it away from being this beautiful relationship that does look like Christ's unfailing love into a bond between two people. And while yes, there's that bond, I think we miss the main point. So I really encourage y'all to dig deeper on this. Like I said, this Momentary Marriage by John Piper, the camera's actually sitting on my copy of it right now because I don't have a camera stand because I didn't buy one, is a great reference to that. I know J.D. Greer also has a series of sermons on dating and marriage and relationships, and he talks about this area of marriage showing Christ's love here on earth. So to those of you who might be married, do you portray that love that Christ has? I know that's a huge challenge, but that's really one of the only examples here on earth we have of Christ loving us. And that is huge. So I challenge you to use that example. I challenge you to dive deeper into it. There's a few chapters that talk about marriage. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. There might be one in 2 Corinthians. I know Ephesians, like I just went through, chapter 5. But look into it. Look into the reasons behind marriage and why God holds it so sacred and why divorce is looked down upon. But that's all I've got for y'all in this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. Leave your comment on what you think the most important aspect in marriage is. You are welcome to disagree with me, but this is what I see it, because not everyone can have kids, and not everyone struggles with sexual immorality the same way, but everyone should be called to portray Christ-likeness. But yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Trying to build the channel and just keep working on it. So thank y'all so much. Another thing, please leave some topics for me. I would love to have some video topics that y'all want to see, not just stuff that I'm coming up with, even though I do have a list. Really enjoy making these, and I hope they just keep getting better. So thank y'all so much. I'll catch y'all later.